Good morning, everyone. This is Chair French, and I am convening the regularly scheduled KCC business meeting for 10 a.m. this Tuesday, May 11th, 2021. Joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Susan Duffy and Commissioner Dwight Keene. On today's agenda, we have 18 consent agenda items, 4 noticed items, and 1 discussion item for a FERC matter, which may involve potential commission action. With that, we will move into our consent agenda items. Commissioners, you've had the opportunity to review the proposed items on the consent agenda. And let me turn to you to see if you have any questions about those items. And I will start first with Commissioner Keene.
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duffy.
I have no questions, and I move adoption of the consent agenda items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Thank you. We will now move to our first noticed item. This is in docket number 21, SCCC 065 KSF, and it is a proposed order designating presiding officer and setting hearing on staff's motion to compel. Our presenter for this item is Brian Fedotin. Brian?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
On April 12th, Commission staff filed a motion to compel seeking some more complete discovery responses. Since an audit report must be filed in this docket by June 30th, time is of the essence. Therefore, in this order, the Commission sets a hearing on staff's motion to compel for May 21st, beginning at 10 a.m. to be conducted via Zoom due to the pandemic. And I will be designated to preside over that motion to compel. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fedotin. Let me turn to my fellow commissioners again for any questions. I'll start with Commissioner Duffy.
I have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Keene.
None for me either. I'd move approval.
And I second Commissioner Keene's motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the described order in this docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Now move to our second noticed item. This is in docket number EKME 397 COM. And this is a proposed order on petition for reconsideration. Our presenter for this item is Ms. Lauren Lauschman. Lauren?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Before you is an order denying Mr. Floor's petition for reconsideration. On April 8th, 2021, the Commission issued an order requiring Evergy to produce a copy of its transmission vegetation management program without a confidential designation to Mr. Floors. The Commission found many of Mr. Floors' claims were resolved by receipt of the document and denied the remaining claims. Mr. Floors filed a petition for reconsideration. The order denies the petition for failing to demonstrate the Commission's rationale was premised on mistaken law or mistaken fact. With that, I recommend approval of the order and will stand for questions.
Thank you, Lauren. We'll now turn to the commissioners for any questions, starting with Commissioner Keene.
None for me, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy.
I have no questions, and I move approval of the order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order in this docket. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. We now move to our third noticed item. This is in docket number 20 EKCE 425 COM. There's a proposed order in that docket. And again, our presenter is Ms. Lauren Lauschman.
Mr. Tinbrink filed a formal complaint challenging Evergy's proposed location for an electric transmission line. The proposed route goes through a portion of Mr. Tinbrink's property. The order denies Mr. Tinbrink's complaint and it explains the proposed project does not meet the statutory definition of an electric transmission line subject to siting review by the Commission, and the Commission cannot require Evergy to select a different route for the project. The order notes Mr. Tinbrink has signed an easement conveyance with Evergy. Additionally, the order finds the project and route selection was reasonable, but encourages Evergy to establish a framework to explain the route selection process more thoroughly in the future. With that, I recommend approval of the order and will stand for questions.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any questions on this order? And I'll start with Commissioner Keen.
None for me, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy.
No questions, but I have several comments. I spent quite a bit of time on this order and on the problem at hand. So staff contended that the commission does not have jurisdictional authority to cite transmission line in question due to the size, but instead that the focus should be on the fairness of the process employed by Evergy with respect to the proposed project. Staff noted that the process is very informal and could be better documented. Well, that's an understatement, in my opinion. As I looked at the notes or minutes, I mean, I'm left with these 2 pages of handwritten notes that look like comments I would make on a scribble pad if I was just, I don't know, some random thing I might have been doing. This is the extent of the documentation for this project. I find that very disheartening, and in our order, we do strongly encourage Evergy to establish a framework that will explain the route selection process and will include documentation of the process and communication with landowners. That is the very least they should be doing. And frankly, I was disappointed to see that this is the best they do. And with that, I think, I hope very much so that Evergy takes our recommendation and establishes a process. I think that will save them a lot of grief with landowners as they continue their replacement processes. And to me, this is right in line with other issues that they've encountered as they've replaced poles throughout the state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of this order.
We have a motion and a second to approve the order. Is there any further discussion on that motion? I think I would just add, I share some of Commissioner Duffy's concerns. I always struggle with these types of dockets and perhaps a finding that we don't have jurisdiction, because I do think the commission has broad plenary powers, but we have to exercise our judgment on, when is the right time to exercise those powers. And I don't think it's in the public interest for us to be in the minutia of a utility's day-to-day operations. But as a general matter, but I do agree that the narrative in this order makes sense, and we do encourage Evergy to maybe have a more documented process. So I share your comments. With that, if there is no further discussion, those in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Lauren. Now move to docket number 21, TRAM 415 PEN. This is a proposed penalty order in that described docket, and our presenter for this item is Mr. Hassan Latif. Hassan?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
The penalty order before you is the result of a 2-week investigation of Everella Trucking, a motor carrier operating out of Garden City, Kansas. The investigation took place as a result of a follow-up to an investigation and penalty order issued in April of 2020. The previous penalty order was issued in April 30th, 2020, alleged 12 violations with fines totaling $12,850. At the same time, at that same commission business meeting, The commission also issued an emergency suspension of the carrier at the request of the Transportation Division because there were a number of substance and alcohol testing program violations, among other things. Since April of 2020, the carrier entered into a settlement agreement with staff to correct its issues and eventually was reinstated to begin operations again on November 17th of 2020. During the current investigation, special investigators Penny Fryback and Erica Pargas found that the substance and alcohol testing violations had been corrected, but there were 3 violations the carrier continued to make. Of the $5,000 in penalties alleged in this penalty order, $4,000 are the result of one violation, which is operating over the required weight limits. This penalty is larger because it was cited in the previous penalty order as well. Operating over the weight limits of the vehicles or trailers being used, it not only causes wear and tear on the roads, but it also damages the equipment over time, including the wheels and the axles, and things like that. And it could lead to future accidents, which is why staff takes these violations very seriously. The other 2 violations included a $500 violation for failure to conduct an annual inspection, an additional $500 for failing to require a driver to properly record their driving hours. These were both enhanced as well because they were repeat violations. Staff believes the $5,000 in penalties in this penalty order is the proper course of action to ensure compliance with the applicable motor carrier rules and regulations. And with that, staff recommends approval of this order. I, as well as Director Hamey and Deputy Director Davenport and Jared are available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Latif. I appreciate that comprehensive description. Let me turn to my fellow commissioners to see if they have any questions, and I'll start this time with Commissioner Duffy.
I would just like to visit briefly with Inspector Jared Smith. So were you the inspector on the previous inspection of this company?
No, Commissioner. I
Okay.
have no previous experience with that carrier.
Okay, so a fresh set of eyes looking at this, and any reason why they continue to not, that they are not able to abide by the rules and regulations of the road?
No valid reason.
No valid reason. Okay. Again, I think the enhanced penalty is definitely in order. And you're right, Mr. Latif, the end result of not adhering to the weight limits can have catastrophic effect. So I wholeheartedly support the enhanced fine. And I thank you, Mr. Smith, for the work that you performed.
Commissioner Duffy. Commissioner Keen, do you have any questions on this docket?
No questions. I would subscribe to Commissioner Duffy's comments and move approval of the order.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order. Is there any further discussion on this order? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Mr. Latif, and thank you, staff, for being on for this item. And we now move to our last noticed item. This is a discussion item. It's a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission matter, and it is FERC docket number RP 21-813. Our presenter for this item is Mr. Michael Neely. Michael?
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. On April 30th, Spire Marketing filed a formal complaint at FERC against Panhandle Eastern Pipeline Company, alleging that Panhandle's request to only waive operational flow order penalties for one of the 5 days during the February polar vortex event was unjustly discriminatory. Spire is asking FERC to waive all OFO penalties for all days, or in the alternative, find that at least 2 of the 5 days should be waived. The proceeding itself does not have any direct impact on Kansas, but our DC Council has recommended that we file dockless intervention in the matter to monitor the situation and respond if necessary. He indicated that FERC often makes decisions in individual complaints with industry-wide implications, And since this has to do with the polar vortex event, he recommended we intervene. So with that, I would request approval to file dockless intervention in the matter through our DC counsel, Jason Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Let me turn to my fellow commissioners for any potential questions, and I will start with Commissioner Keen first.
None for me, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes, I do have a question. I'm assuming that this company is probably one of many that has filed a complaint similar to their complaint. Is that correct?
I know there's been a lot of requests by the pipelines to waive the flow order penalties. I just got this the gas marketing complaint from our DC counsel. I'm assuming there have been many others, but this is the only one he's recommended we intervene in so far.
So what he's saying is that potentially they could take one of these complaints and turn it into industry-wide decision.
Correct.
And would that affect only those that had filed a complaint, or would that affect everybody in the industry that was penalized?
It could affect everyone because they take a decision and then they use that same policy in all the other matters. So I know I've seen that with return on equity decisions, and so sometimes you got to be active.
What is the time frame? Do we believe that they'll make a finding in this particular one, or do we know?
I don't know the time frame for the decision.
Okay, that's fine. That's all the questions I have.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion on the matter?
Please.
I move the commission authorize our DC council to file for dockless intervention in FERC docket number RP 21-813 and make any other filings as necessary to protect the interests of Kansas ratepayers.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to take the described action. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Neely. We have now come to the end of our agenda today. One reminder, we do have a work study session coming up at 11 o'clock. So for anyone streaming, you can also tune in at 11 o'clock to see our work study session with Southwest Power Pool representatives to discuss the grid emergency event and their reaction to that event. So please feel free to join us at that time. If there is no further business to come before us this morning, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
A motion and a second to adjourn. Those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.